Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. I tell you what, stop what you're doing right now. Make sure you have liked this video if you're watching on YouTube, and make sure you've subscribed wherever you're listening to this podcast. We are about to start the wrap-up show, aka the Hardies, and we just wanted to say thank you guys for following along all year. We're really excited for what we've accomplished in 2023 and what we're going to do in 2024. So, if you're thinking of a way to say thank you, the easiest thing you can do is share the show with a friend and make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome into hardcore Penn State football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Well, we all watched the Dolphins game last night, so been better, but I kind of broke it down like this. It's like when the end of the Dolphins season, it's kind of like when a boyfriend and girlfriend break up, and they always say the woman always has an easier time with it because she was so sad during the relationship. And then after the relationship is over, it's just like, oh yeah, it's over. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of like the woman after a breakup. So, not great, but, could be worse.
I guess that's one way to put it. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your Dolphins. At least they didn't do what the Cowboys are currently doing live on television currently. So
yeah, it's pretty ugly.
Today, good. Sorry, let's just wrap up your final thoughts.
Yeah, they're playing the Packers, and it's a blowout. So Sean Clifford may get some time while we're live. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and you know that I will say something about that. So for those that haven't been here before, or just this is their first Hardies show, the Hardies is our version of the award shows that I think going on right now, and it's our way of wrapping up the show in kind of a fun way. Now, we might talk about some other things, but I think the awards do a really good job of kind of talking and highlighting a lot of the members of the team. So I think that's fun. I've said this before, this is one of my favorite shows because for some of these guys, this is the last time we ever talk about them ever again. I mean, I would say probably a lot of them we do because they go play in the NFL, they come back next year. But there's probably a couple guys that we will never say their names again, and this is kind of the closer to that. It's the closure of the 2023 season, not just for Penn State, but for us as well. We'll officially move to the next season after this one and really start looking ahead to 2024. And just another reminder, we don't go anywhere. I know, we didn't have a show maybe last week. That's just been because things have been a little bit busy, but we're going to be here all spring, all summer, and get you guys ready for the 2024 season. So no off season around here, and really looking forward to the show today, Shawn.
Yeah, same here. It's always a good show to do. I know we'll be talking about some of these guys leaving during our draft coverage. And for those of you who are new here, we do cover the draft. We've done it the last 2 seasons. And, before you know it, I know if your team was eliminated like mine was, the combine will be coming up soon. So it'll be here before you know it. And we'll be looking at 40 times and bench presses, and our guys tend to always do well in the combine, and we certainly have some impressive athletes that'll be reporting this year.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think Theo Johnson's going to be one of those guys that could just dominate the combine, so really looking forward to seeing what he does.
Yeah, Chop too. Especially in the strength stuff, if Chop could prove, if he's really impressive in the weight room, I could see him skyrocketing up boards. So some guys with something to prove and guys that I think are going to really deliver. And all of our guys that are going, I think they're all going to do really, really well in interviews. So that's a big help.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find our poll questions that we did to start the season. So as I try to find those, we'll talk about those in a second. But until I find those, let's just start with our bold predictions, Shawn, for the year. I had Penn State getting 50 sacks for the season, and I was wrong. They ended up with 49, which the one sack in that I think it was Abdul Carter's that was a fumble that was called back for as an incompletion, which rightfully so, I think, was called back for an incompletion. That was the difference between potentially 50 sacks and not. So, nevertheless, I'm happy with the performance. I'm happy with being only one sack off. But man, I wish they just could have been able to seal the deal there. So, Shawn, yours maybe not so good.
Yeah, I think I bet on the wrong horse a little bit. I did have Keaton Ellis having 5 turnovers. Yeah, it didn't happen. Fell a little short. I believe he ended up with 2. So, I think I underestimated KJ Winston a little bit and how fast he developed, and I didn't think he was going to be this good this fast. And I did think he was going to have a good season, but I just thought it was going to be more in a reserve role. So shout out to him. He deserved to get the playing time. But it just hurt my my preseason prediction, my bold prediction a little bit. And yeah, and obviously too, our we both predicted an 11-1 season, and we were also fell short on that. And that's probably the one that hurts the most, right?
Yeah. We both thought 11-1. You thought they were going to beat Ohio State, yep, and I thought they were going to beat Michigan originally, and they didn't beat either. So, yeah, I think if you would have told, I don't even know if like making the playoff was the expectation for Penn State this year. But I think most fans would have said the expectation was to at least beat Michigan or Ohio State, right? Like even if they would have maybe lost a heartbreaker fluke to somebody, I think you maybe get over it if you at least beat Michigan or Ohio State. And maybe you don't get in because like this year they probably of all years wouldn't have got in with just 11-1 with the loss to like Rutgers. But knowing that you maybe beat Ohio State and Michigan or whatever the case may have been, I think that would have been enough to be like, okay, this was still a success. Penn State didn't make the playoff, and they also did not beat Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think even with how the Peach Bowl went, I think it would have been, even if the Peach Bowl happened exactly the way that it happened, and we had the opt-outs, we had kind of the half opt-outs as well, it probably, at least for me, I would have been able to take that a lot better if Penn State had beaten either Ohio State or Michigan, because we at least got the monkey off our back. And we could say, it sucks that this year was so competitive at the top and we just couldn't sneak in the playoff. And that's just bad luck. But I feel like you could live with that a little bit more because you got over the Ohio State hump or you got over the Michigan hump. And I mean, we didn't get any over any hump this year. We just didn't accomplish our goals. And I think if you ask the people at Lash, if they're being honest with you, I think they tell you the same thing. I mean, we won the games we were supposed to win, and it is, I guess, hard to win 10 games in the Big Ten. But I mean, your greatness is defined by how you do against upper echelon opponents. And we played 2, and we lost to both of them, and then we lost to a really good Ole Miss team, albeit with a lot of opt-outs. And yeah, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth going into the off season, and that really sucks.
Yeah. And I don't think the Utah game last year, they win that to me. And I said this before the game, so anybody who thinks I'm just coping, I mean, whatever. But I had said this before. You kind of disagreed with me a little bit, but I just didn't feel like this had the same. If they win, it's still a successful year. Like we kind of, well, I guess we kind of both agreed on that, but like, I just didn't feel any oomph from this bowl game specifically. I didn't lose too much sleep over it the night before, like I kind of did for the Rose Bowl, and I guess that maybe says all. That says it all right there. So even if they beat Ole Miss, I don't think it does much as far as changing the mindset of the fans and how they feel about how the season went overall. It would have been maybe a softer blow, but that game was a shell for both teams of what they were capable of. I know Ole Miss had a lot more players that played, but it wouldn't have really made me feel any better, Shawn.
Well, and I could understand that because let's say we did win the bowl. All right, then you basically just repeated 2022. Like it's just a carbon copy. And this was supposed to be, in a lot of people's eyes, the team that takes that next step. And we're going to talk about in the off season a little bit more. But I think we both are in agreement on this, that this was probably the team to do it rather than next year. There was a lot of debate about, about these two teams, the one we have coming up and the one we just had, about which one is more likely to take that next step to, compete for a national championship. I thought it was this one. And it's because we had that elite defense, and I think our defense is going to be very good next year. Just looking at the guys we have, I do think we're going to be able to reload at that edge spot. But Chop Robinson's probably the best edge guy that we've had in maybe since Courtney Brown, and you just don't replace that that easily. And Kalen King and Johnny Dixon, we saw what could happen when they're not on the field, and the defense just does not work the same. And we lost Manny, and I like Tom Allen, but I know for a fact Manny Diaz is the elite defensive coordinator. We just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and the end of the show today, we'll talk a little bit more about 2024, but we also have a lot of 2024 to discuss 2024. So I did see, shout out to For the Bloggy, they did have a new film room comparing Manny Diaz to Tom Allen. So recommend you check that out. I found the thread for the questions, the preseason poll questions. First one, who will be the most impactful player on offense? 48% said Drew Aller. Nick Singleton, Olu, and Keandre Lambert-Smith were the other options there. I guess they were right about Keandre Lambert-Smith. Only 1.5% voted for him. But I don't even think you could say Nick Singleton as if you're talking the entire season. Like you'd think you have to kind of go Katron there before Nick. But who will be the most impactful player on defense? Abdul Carter with 48.5% of the vote, and Chop Robinson was second. Kalen King was third there. So I think that's okay. I think in hindsight, we'd agree probably Chop Robinson, but and then probably even Adisa Isaac before Abdul Carter, just because Adisa Isaac did lead the team in TFLs and sacks, if I'm not mistaken. Who will be the most impactful player on special teams? Now, they kind of got bailed out here a little bit because for kicker, we didn't know on August 21st who the kicker was going to be. So I put kicker Zahadak or Falcons, and that did win the vote with 39%, but that wasn't separated out. Zahadak actually was a starter, so take that for what you will. Nick Singleton came in at second with 30%, and then Paqueta and or Thompson came in at 27%. So we'll give you a little bit of a rest on that one. But here's the one, Shawn, that probably makes you go, oof. And that is, who will be the most impactful newcomer? 76% of the vote went to Dante Cephas. Might be up for an award later on in the show.
Tough.
Tony Rojas with 15%. I think that was accurate. Trey Potts probably didn't get enough love there with 3.2%. And Malik McLean had 4.8%.
But out of those options, which one would you go with?
Trey Potts.
Yeah, but I think Trey Potts performed the best, but he just didn't play very much.
No, but he did catch a pass, throw a pass, and run in for a touchdown.
It's
Wait,
true.
or sorry, I'm second. Throw a touchdown, catch a touchdown, run for a touchdown. But I mean, think about the Illinois game just for a second. Like maybe they score in a different way, but that passing touchdown is pretty big at that moment, which in hindsight, knowing that the offense was going to have some deficiencies, that was a pretty big touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could see that.
Hell, even the Northwestern game, right? His touchdown in the Northwestern game, I believe it was maybe that was the one to seal it. No, he had the running one early. That was a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember during the year we wanted to see more of him because every time he played, he did make an impact. And the thing that you like to see with a guy like that, who's not the everyday starter, is you want to see them continue to play with continue playing like they have something to prove. And I certainly saw that with Trey Potts, and it was cool to see. I just wish he had more opportunities. Especially in bigger moments, because I think there are times at this year that we could have used them and maybe could have helped us. I don't know about outright win a game, but I think he could have helped in that pursuit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. What game are you most worried about? Fans are correct on that one, Michigan. I think we could agree there since they did, in fact, win the national championship, that was the team that Penn State should have been most worried about.
Yeah, they're pretty good. You watched the championship game, right?
Yeah, so I was on a plane when it kicked off. It was a 2-hour flight, and I was like, oh, I'll probably come back sometime in the third quarter, if not fourth quarter. And I land, it's only halftime. I'm like, oh my God, they're advertising the hell out of this thing. Get in a 20-minute lift, get to my hotel. It's a Hilton Garden Inn. I am still a Diamond member for Hilton, and at this specific at this specific hotel, oh, absolutely, you have to let everybody know when you're a Diamond member. At this specific hotel, you got a $20 voucher for the bar every day. And it started the night I checked in, and it was like 10:15 when I landed, and they were still open. I grabbed a double Jameson and headed up to my room, watched the fourth quarter from my hotel room under the blanket, drinking a double Jameson. Fantastic way.
That sounds very nice, actually. Yeah, my brother got married on Monday, so I was at that wedding. It was the earliest I've ever gotten out of a wedding, so I was able to watch a good amount of the game. I actually went up to a bar to watch it. Of course, there are a couple Michigan fans here. There are random Michigan fans in Pennsylvania. It's very odd.
I especially feel like in your area, there's a lot of confused people.
It's very strange. And that they were playing their stupid fight song over the jukebox, so that was annoying. And Mr. Brightside, of course. So it kind of sucked, but
I'm okay with Mr. Brightside, but Hail to the Victor or whatever it is awful.
I freaking hate hearing it, but
my I think it was my freshman year of college. Penn State did that awesome thing where they played basketball and hockey at Madison Square Garden in the same day. And
right, I remember that.
It was like, I'm not kidding you, I think it was $40, maybe it was $80, whatever it was, for a bus to and from New York City, a t-shirt, and a ticket to both the basketball and hockey game. It was something crazy good deal. They didn't do it, I don't think, many times after that. But Michigan beat us in basketball and destroyed us in hockey. And it was like the fight song over and over and over. So
it's a tough listen.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, no, I was able to watch it. And that was I think if Washington could hit on a couple, like it just comes back to the same thing with Michigan. If they get to play their game, they're really, really hard to beat. And they got to play their game. It's simple it is. If Washington connects on a couple of bombs early or is able to slow down Edwards just a little bit, and things are vastly different if Michigan has to come from behind. But when they get a lead, I would say they're up there as one of the toughest teams in like the last 20 years to beat when they have that lead and they can lean on that running game. But then they don't have to ask JJ McCarthy to do anything special. They're a really difficult team to beat, and they run it at you, but they ran it at you in a schematically friendly way.
Yeah, and if you think about it, they were only put on the ropes once this season, and that was by Bama. And JJ, to his credit, made some big throws to get that game to overtime. But that was the only time this season. I know Ohio State had a chance to win at the end, but it felt like all the way they were going to win in that game. At least it felt that way to me. And the only time they were in real danger was Bama, and they were able to overcome it. So I would say I think they would have won it without all the controversy because I just think they were the best team this year. But this national championship is going to have, and I'm not saying this to be a bitter Penn State fan. Like I said, I think they had the best team this year. But it is going to be a little tainted. And sorry if that upsets the Go Blue crew.
I don't think people quite understand when people say that, right? Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from the players on the field for what they were able to do. I think they absolutely earned it from individually, each of those players. But in my opinion, it's not even what they did or didn't do this year as far as the cheating and scouting, but it's the momentum they got from the past 2 years of cheating. That to me is where I get upset. It wasn't necessarily this year as much as they got to this point because of some of the cheating. And that wasn't just the scouting, but also the recruiting when they weren't supposed to during COVID. So that to me is when the asterisk comes into play. Not so much the actual gameplay this year, but how they got the chance to have all the pieces together to go on a run like this.
Yeah. Because remember back in 2021, guys, they weren't nearly as good as they were now. We almost beat them. And that was one of our weaker teams in the past 6 or 7 years or so. And we've had them on the ropes. And I think it really helped them knowing everybody signs that year, as well as last year, because last year they were very good. They weren't as good as this team, though. So, yeah, it's going to be a little more tainted. And I just think
I will say this,
something
though,
that now go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, all I was going to say, though, is I think there is something important here to learn or to realize that in the era of the transfer portal and opting out of bowl games, they did have a nucleus of experienced leadership. And I feel like you and I talk about that a lot as far as how important leadership is. We talked a lot about after last year during the Hardies last year and how important it was to have that leadership. They did have it, and it did pay dividends for them. So don't discredit that and how important that is. I think that's a really big part for how successful they were this year.
Of course. And they had experience in these playoff games too. They had their face beat off of them by Georgia, but you could still learn in something like that. Then they got upset last year by TCU. But still, you learn. You get better. You learn. The best teams learn from getting beaten. Like we lost in '85, we won in '86. Like that's the way it's supposed to go when you have a championship team. And they had basically the same team, like you said, the same nucleus of quorum. They had McCarthy, Donovan Edwards, Roman Wilson. Like they had that core. And Junior Colson. And now the thing with Michigan is they're going to lose a lot of that. They're going to lose pretty much all that next year. So probably going to take a small step back. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is coming back. It's funny, we were just texting about this today. I think Sharon Moore is going to be their coach next year. So I think they're going to end up being fine as long as the NCAA doesn't drop a nuke on them, which I kind of doubt.
Yeah. And we'll have more to discuss on that. We went on a little Michigan tangent there. Here's some more juicier questions for you. Penn State's pass offense, specifically pass offense, will be blank in 2023. 78% said better, Shawn. Only 3.1% said worse.
The grass ain't always greener on the other side, kids.
Penn State's defense, I got to give some credit here because I don't know if I was as confident that this defense would be better, but 82.8% said that they would be better this year, and they were good in 2022, but I think we all agree that they were indeed better. So for all of you that voted incorrectly on the pass offense. I think you were correct, at least on the defense.
Yeah, and if you said better for pass offense but worse in defense, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're suspended from the show for a week.
Yeah, for at least a little bit. I will be happy / satisfied if Penn State goes blank in 2023. 77% said 11-1. Then Penn State, the actual prediction though, was also 11-1, but just slightly less at 76.3%. Somebody had 9-3, but 15% thought they'd go 10-2. So not too shabby.
Yeah. I mean, I think 11-1, like even a lot of the experts, quote unquote, had us going 11-1. At least the beat writers that follow the team.
I don't think I did all of the awards here. Maybe I did. No, I only did a couple of them. But when I get to those awards, I will say what the preseason favorite was. Because we did ask for, it looks like 4 of them. And we'll get to those in a second here. All right. So, Shawn, any other final kind of initial thoughts before we start with the awards? I'm thinking the awards are going to probably lead us down a lot of conversation.
Well, I got some breaking news.
Shawn Clifford
has checked in to the Packers and Cowboys game with 5 minutes 52 seconds left.
Throw a bomb, Shawn. Throw a bomb. Audible. Do you think Micah Parsons tries to kill him?
Mike is still in, so it's very possible. They were teammates.
Yeah, they played.
Yeah,
both played in.
Yeah, a couple of years they were. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you don't have any other questions,
no, I don't think so.
Thoughts, we can start with the first award. So let me. I actually didn't test this beforehand, so I have no idea if we're gonna like how this looks, but we're gonna try and see how we feel. Probably should have checked to make sure it was gonna work, but I'm sure it'll be okay. So the first award is going to be the Premature Maturation Award. See what this looks like. Perfect. Look at that.
How about that?
Looks Every great. Once in a while, I get lucky. The Premature Maturation Award goes to a player that maybe came into the spotlight a second before or maybe a season before and really matured and kind of stole the spotlight and surprised some of us. Maybe it wasn't maybe a guy who was under the radar. We thought maybe that guy had the ability, but maybe just did it a season early. And we did have, I believe, let me just see here. If we had, I don't think we took, no, we didn't take any votes on this one. So we didn't have a preseason vote. But this year's award is going to go to safety KJ Winston. And I don't really know if this one was that difficult to decide. Based off the voting, which by the way, we had over 50 votes, KJ Winston barely beat out Denai Dennis Sutton and barely beat out Tony Rojas. He only got 33.3% of the vote. But in my opinion, I thought it was a pretty obvious one. KJ Winston went from maybe not a starter at the beginning of the season in a lot of people's eyes to being the guy back there in playing center field. So his physicality really impressed me. It seems like he's there from a physical standpoint, which I think is sometimes a question mark for the younger guys. And he was fantastic. He's very dependable. And going into 2024, Shawn, you got to feel really happy about where that position group is because of KJ Winston.
Yeah, no doubt. He got my vote as well, and I mentioned just about 20 minutes ago that I thought Keaton Ellis would be the starter at safety there, but KJ was just ahead of schedule, and he looked a lot like how I thought he would look next year, and hence why he won the Premature Maturation Award. And well deserved. He was all over the field, and he's next. He's next. He's that next great safety, and we've been right now we're in a pretty good, a great time to be a Penn State safety these past few years. Big credit to Anthony Poindexter, both for recruiting and for developing these guys, because it's been as rock solid a group as you could have. And big shout out to KJ Winston, well deserved for this Hardies Award.
Yeah. Hopefully he accepts it via social media. Shout out to, I want to give a shout out to, because when we start showing these graphics, shout out to Dragan, who works at Mercury. I think these are our best graphics we've gotten so far. So shout out to management.
100%.
Don't hear us saying that very much often. We don't like to give praise at all to management. We like to keep it for ourselves. But we'll give them a little bit of love here.
Yeah, you give the suits love when they deserve it.
Shawn, did you vote for KJ?
I did.
Okay. So we're both 1-0 as far as voting for the winner of the award. Okay, the next award is going to be the Getting Offensive Award, which in a way you could go back to the impactful player on offense question, which in the preseason everyone thought Drew Aller was going to be that guy. This one was also really close because, and I think, Shawn, it was probably really close because there wasn't necessarily much outstanding offense going on for a lot of the year. And so it made it difficult to choose one person to win the offensive award, which getting offensive is that. It is basically your offensive player of the year. And so without further ado, see if I have it here. Without further ado, this year's winner is tight end Tyler Warren, winning the Getting Offensive Player of the Year award at the Hardies. Close, and I mean close race. I mean, you can't even begin to imagine how close this was. And the numbers speak for themselves here. 35% of the vote goes to Tyler Warren, 29% to Olu Fashanu, and 27.5% of the vote went to Katron Allen. 1 vote for Theo Johnson, 1 vote for Nick Singleton, and 2 votes for Drew Aller, which say what you want there. Shawn, did you vote for Tyler Warren?
No, but I'm fine with Tyler Warren winning it. I voted for Olu. I just think when you think of the most, okay, let's be real, the offense wasn't what we wanted it to be this year. So that's why I'm okay with Warren winning it, because I feel like he was one of the guys that are most steady. But, I mean, Olu's our best offensive tackle maybe since 1994. So, to me, you have to go with the best guy in the unit. So that's why I went with Olu.
I think I honestly am not 100% sure. I think I went with Tyler Warren, mostly because, well, to be honest with you, I agree with you as far as Olu. I thought Olu honestly was going to get a lot of awards later that I kind of penciled it in for. And I don't know about you, but I tried not to give the same award to everybody, because you could make the case for Olu for 7 of these awards because he just kind of fits the billing in a lot of those different ways. But statistically, what Tyler Warren was able to do was, in a way, the best. He ended up with 7 touchdowns on the year. I know Theo Johnson also had 7, but I just feel like Tyler Warren did it more consistently throughout the season. And I mean, he was a second leader with yards too, so receiving wise. So I don't know. I think it's a tough one, but I don't think you can really argue anybody over anybody at this point, which again probably speaks to the lack of the offense instead of maybe how good the offense was.
Yeah, I think the fans got the top 2 guys right. I'll definitely say that. Katron deserves some mention as well. I thought he was actually a little underrated this year. I know there are a couple of games that he wasn't great in, but I thought he was good. I didn't think he was any worse than last year for sure. And I thought he was pretty damn good his freshman year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations to tight end Tyler Warren, who is coming back to Penn State for
Yes,
another
he is.
season. That was a big get for Penn State to get him back. We'll have a chance to break the all-time receiving touchdowns for a tight end set by Pat Fryermuth. I think I don't quote me on this, but I think it's roughly around 4, 6, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
So
that I don't know.
a good season should get him over the top. So all righty. Well, let's go to the next award here. Tight ends, by the way, they lose Theo Johnson. Khalil Dinkins played a lot in the Peach Bowl. You and I are very excited about Andrew Appleyea. And we mentioned this during the recruiting show. I at least think Luke Reynolds, I know it's a stacked room, stacked group. I just still feel like somehow Luke Reynolds is going to get on the field, which I don't know how they do it, but maybe they just go to 13 personnel. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when you have what sounds to me like a rare talent in Luke Reynolds, I think it just increases the chances um, that he can get on the field. And as you mentioned, it's a tough room to break into because we have two guys in Tyler Warren and Khalil Dinkins, and Khalil Dinkins is probably one of the most underrated guys on the roster, in my opinion. And I really like Andrew Appleyea. So it's going to be a tough room to break into. But if you could bring something special to that group in your freshman year, then play. No doubt about it. I'm totally fine with trying to find a place for him to play on the field. And he's a guy, too, that you could potentially split out wide. And I'm very interested to see in what Andy Kotelnicki is able to do with him and potentially splitting him out.
It's a match made in heaven, I think, with those two. I just think that's
Yeah,
if you're
because
Andy
Kotelnicki loves his
Kotelnicki,
tight ends. Yeah.
yeah, I just think that they both seem like football guys too, and I just think if you're Andy Kotelnicki, like getting Luke Reynolds, you gotta be like, I don't know if that was probably this ending selling point, but that was definitely a nice little benefit to throw in there, getting the number one or at least top 5 tight end in that class. Um, all right, let's talk Mr. Dependable. This award goes obviously to the person who is most dependable, who you could rely on. In the preseason, 42% of the vote expected Olu Fashanu to get it. Katron Allen with 28%. This year, the winner of Mr. Dependable goes to offensive tackle Olu Fashanu. Olu received 35% of the vote. The next closest person was Tyler Warren with 19.6%. So not nearly as close of a race in this one. I think this is, in my opinion, the one that made the most sense, right? You didn't have to think about the left tackle. You didn't have to think about who was over there. Olu was there. He did exactly what you wanted him to do. He didn't even have to come back this year. He did. He kind of played another year with his team, and he didn't disappoint. And he was able to stay healthy too, which is something everybody wanted him to see done. So, just all in all, thank you. I want to say for coming back and playing and letting us experience what it's like to have a top 5, top 10 player on offense, but specifically, if not number 1, number 2 offensive tackle in the draft. It's Penn State's offensive line, Shawn, is just really complete 180 from where it was, say, in 2015 or so. So, yeah, a 3-star guy too, and he turned into a rock on the offensive line. So I think I voted for him, but Shawn, I'll let you get your 2 cents in.
I also voted for Olu for this one. I kind of took it. I had Olu winning the last one too. It was kind of like the Godfather at the Oscars, I think, with Olu. I had him winning a few. So, I mean, when you think about dependability with the left tackle, I mean, you think of Olu right away. And as you mentioned, it's been a long journey with our offensive line through the past decade or so. And it's, I've never seen an offensive tackle like him at Penn State. And it's very rare that I say that about anybody, because I've seen so many great players, but he's everything you want in a left tackle, and he's going to be really good from day one. He'd be starting on a lot of NFL teams this year. I mean, I'll just put it that way. So very grateful that we were able to have him for a couple of years. I didn't think he was going to come back last year. I think it was a surprise to everybody. But he's a guy that takes academics very seriously. He wanted to get that degree. He got that degree, and he dominated on the football field. And he's going to be a top 10 pick. I knock on wood. So we love you all.
Yeah, I haven't really looked too much at Redskins, Bears. Are they kind of in the mix? I haven't even really looked at mock drafts yet.
Yeah, I think I saw the Bears a couple times.
Makes
Titans,
sense.
That was another one. I really wish for Olu's sake that Vrabel stayed with the Titans. I don't understand why the Titans fired Mike Vrabel, but I just kind of think he fits that mentality of that team that was that character, the team that was developed there. So
it just always stinks that, I mean, this sounds obvious, but it stinks that the great players go to really bad situations a lot of the time.
I know. I mean, look at a guy like Bryce Young. He's being kind of written off now, but the Panthers are awful. But that's the nature of the draft, I suppose. I feel like at
Saquon.
Saquon. I feel like at offensive tackle, though, you could still excel in your one spot, but you could just be on a terrible team. But the team won't necessarily drag you down. Think of like Joe Thomas on those Browns teams. And I think the guy was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he was just blocking for nobody his whole career.
Yeah, I think he definitely double-digit Pro Bowls there, too.
Yeah, he was just, he's one of the best left tackles of our lifetime, but he was never on a good team. So Sometimes that happens as a tackle.
The next award is the Havoc Award. One of my favorites. I love seeing defensive players cause disruption in the backfield, just basically trying to inflict as much chaos and pain on the offense. In the preseason, fans expected defensive end Chop Robinson to win the award with 43.1% of the vote. Abdul Carter came in right behind them at 41.4%. So they were kind of almost split between Chop Robinson and Abdul Carter. This year, the winner of the Hardies Award for Havoc goes to defensive end Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson, good, great, just phenomenal player to watch. I think he got the most holding calls for our team in the last 2 years. That's not an actual number, but it just feels like they held him all the time. And he was constantly causing problems for opposing offenses. And this year, he ended up with just 4 sacks, but I just feel like he was always around the football and was always causing problems. I really wish he didn't get banged up in the Ohio State game. I really think he could have maybe made a difference when that game was still really close. But you could have maybe made a case, Shawn, for Adisa Isaac, given that Adisa Isaac had 7.5 sacks. But voting wise, I think this was the biggest landslide one. Chop Robinson, 84.3% of the vote. Adisa Isaac only acquiring 11.8%. You know I'm a huge Adisa Isaac guy. But I think this is just more of what Chop Robinson was able to do maybe outside the box score.
Yeah, and we spoke about this year. This front seven in general, they never played selfish football. They were very unselfish. Like a lot of times you would see when you're watching the game, someone would make the play, but then somebody else would get the sack or somebody else would get the TFL. But that was because Chop would bust through the line, and then the pocket would break down, and Adisa would clean it up, or Curtis Jacobs would clean it up. And that was what you saw constantly this year with Chop Robinson. Just unselfish player. I think that's might be the first thing I say about him, actually, as well as just being constantly disruptive. Had a nose for the football and got better. And I think there's something to be said about improving from being already a great player to becoming that, the whole great to elite thing. Like, he became an elite player this year because there were some things that I wanted to see him get better at. Like in 2022, he kind of came up a little small against Michigan and Ohio State. In 2023, he did not, he came up big, and he is the reason, not the sole reason, but a big part of the reason why JJ McCarthy only threw the ball 9 times against us, because they could not block him. And he was just killing that tackle. And he had a good game against Ohio State prior to his injury as well. And I wanted to see him get better against the run as well. He did that. I think that became kind of an underrated part of his game this year, was his improvement against the run. So, seeing a guy grow and continue to want to be even better than he was last year and build off that, that's what you want to see in a football player, and that's what we saw with Chop this year. So I voted for him for this award. I thought it was, like I said, a consideration definitely for Adisa Isaac as well, but to me, you got to go with Chop.
And this is the second player now that has transferred in that Penn State's been able to develop them a little bit more to get them prepared for the next level. They did it with Arnold Ebiketie, now they've done it with Chop Robinson, and now you kind of have the resume to then go to guys in the portal and say, hey, we can get you from being maybe a third day 3 guy to a day 2 guy, or in maybe Chop Robinson's case, from a day 2 guy to a day 1 guy. So that to me is a huge selling point for Penn State moving forward. Deion Barnes has just really, at this point now, has a lot of tools in his toolbox when he goes out, not only in the transfer portal, but also when he goes out in the recruiting trails as well.
Yeah, I think I remember in the off season, I think I replied to one of your tweets. You said there's a good chance we'll have 3 players drafted in the first round, and I assumed you meant Olu, obviously, Kane, which I'm not sure right now, and the third one you mentioned Chop, and I disagree with you a bit, because I was like, all right, he's very good getting after the quarterback, but I didn't know if I saw a first round draft pick necessarily in 2022. I did this year, and that's awesome to see. It was kind of a similar thing with Jahan Dotson between 2020 and 2021. At some point in 2021, you just watch the guy and you're like, oh, he's a first round pick. Like, you just kind of come to that realization. And shout out to Cory for recognizing that a little bit earlier than his co-host.
Thank you, Shawn. That's why I've already penciled in Jameel Lyons as a future first rounder.
That's good with me.
People didn't watch that episode. There it is. It's just cool to see the amount of love for Sean Clifford right now, and on social media as well, which is cool. But yeah, I like Chop Robinson a lot. I think he just, to your point about the Michigan game, he literally made them change their game plan, which is pretty cool. Let's move on to, we're going to go with the We're Going to Miss You award next, which we did not ask in the preseason about this one. Though We're Going to Miss You award really can be kind of whatever you want it to be. Maybe I would have voted for Sean Clifford back in the day. Maybe it's somebody who you think Penn State maybe doesn't have a good person to fill in for them once they leave. Maybe it's just intangible. Maybe it's just a person that you really like. Voting was a little bit over the place on this one, but the winner of the We're Going to Miss You award goes to offensive tackle Olu Fashanu. And he wins this award with 41% of the vote. Chop Robinson came at 23.5%. And I think awesome to see that Curtis Jacobs gets some love here, 19.6% of the vote. Maybe a little underrated there. Hunter Norzad was on there. Theo Johnson was on there. Trey Potts was on there. And in fourth place was Daquan Hardy. Also got a little bit of a sliver there. I think I actually may have voted for Daquan Hardy, but I kind of expected this to be Olu again. I mean, you offensive linemen don't grow on trees. Offensive linemen are also the hardest position to scout and kind of project as far as what their future is going to be, whether that's in the recruiting cycles or in the transfer portal. So when you get a good one, you got to be happy to have a good one, and you don't necessarily know if you're going to be able to replace them with anything like it. So I totally get why the fans went this way with this vote, and I do think Penn State is going to miss Olu, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I like having guys like him. I I think I voted for Curtis Jacobs, Corey. And the reason I voted for Curtis Jacobs, at some point during the voting, I was like, yeah, I want to spread the wealth around too. And Curtis Jacobs, like you just think of a guy really since his freshman year that was reliable. And he had some baptism by fire moments his freshman year too, as freshmen tend to, but just did his job. Um, Very dependable. Like you think about being dependable, being a good teammate. That's Curtis Jacobs, and always making an impact, being around the ball. That's also him. I mean, you think back to the Michigan game in 2022. He had that big fumble, I think it was a pick six. Yeah. And I know we ended up getting crushed that day, but that kept us in the game. That kept us afloat for a little bit. I would have loved to see him get that fumble return for a touchdown too against Ohio State. But got called back. So he did tend to always make a play in a big spot. So that's just not something that's easy to replace. And I'm curious and the whole we're gonna miss you. I'm curious to see how they shake out that whole linebacker spot, like who plays the Sam, and how and Tom Allen. Linebackers are kind of his thing, so I know he's gonna have a plan for it. But I'm just curious as to how they're gonna go about that because Rojas and Carter kind of do the same thing. So I'm just curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, and you don't want to slow either of them down by making them play Sam. And I love Dom DeLuca more than most, but I don't know if you can put Dom DeLuca out there every snap against the Washington, Oregon's,
Yeah.
USC's, Ohio State's, Michigan's. I just he's good against most of the Big Ten, but yeah, that could potentially does Tony Rojas have a good enough off season to force you to play him? That's really the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Because could you do it? Yeah. But it's like you said, you don't want to slow the guy. You don't want to slow either of them down. I would assume, I'll say if you agree with me on this, um, we'd probably move Carter to the Sam just because he's played more football and I think he might be able to
Correct.
adjust there better. So I think
Correct.
you'd move Carter there, but you really don't want to, limit his impact on a game. But you got to do what you got to do as well. And yeah, with DeLuca, I think his role that he has right now is perfect for him. He belongs on the field. He should be playing in every game, but I don't know if I want him out there for 70 snaps. I'm all
Exactly.
right, 25,
Right.
30 maybe, but I think there's a limit on how much we could get from Don. And that's not a criticism. I just think that's the way it is.
Right. No, I agree 100% with that. I 100%. I think that, and what you said about if Rojas does play your hand, you got to move Carter over in a way that Carter kind of did it before.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it's just easier that way. It's easier to teach the will and then move to Sam once you understand the defense. Hell, Curtis Jacobs did that.
Yes, he did. That's a good point. And he made the transition. And if I remember correctly, the first couple games of 2022, it was he had a couple growing pains, but he grew into it very, very nicely. And I'm kind of happy he made the move. And I'm happy he made the move because it allowed Carter to get on the field. Because if you remember going into 2022, we had similar discussions. How is that going to work? How are we going to put them both on the field? But Andy figured it out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So let's go to the next award here. And this one is going to be the whoa. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is the wow. We were wrong. Which people probably don't even know that was wow was supposed to be like that, but it's wow, like Owen Wilson. Wow. That's
I
better.
got you.
Wow.
Wow.
And so in the description, I made it very clear you could go positive or negative with this. Shawn, I know you went positive. I think I went positive too. But it's basically, look, we thought it was going to be like this, and it wasn't. You can obviously easily make the case for a negative version of that, but you could also make a case for a positive version of that. And we'll talk about maybe our positives in a second. But first, let me present the winner of the Wow, We Were Wrong award for the Hardies 2023 goes to wide receiver Dante Cephas. And not for positive reasons, Shawn. Dante Cephas came in this past summer, wasn't able to get on for spring practice, and struggled to get on the field consistently, to put it simply, and is now back in the transfer portal. And he won 56.9% of the vote. And I will say someone put in there Sean Clifford for this one, which I appreciate, which fits in well here. But I mean, there's a lot of, just to give you an idea, 3 wide receivers made this vote. Three different wide receivers were voted for. I think that speaks a little bit clearly here. The positive one that I see on this list, which I think both of us may have voted for, was defensive tackle Devon Ellis. For him, kind of the same way KJ Winston went from maybe he'll be a starter, but he'll be in a rotation, to Devon Ellis played a lot of football down the stretch, and he always returning for next year. Okay, I thought I was frozen for a second. But I also understand where people came from with this one, and we're not going to tweet this one out to them, but I think it's fair. I think the criticism is fair.
Well, we were wrong, so I will say that. But yeah, I went positive. I went with Devon Ellis. I just he performed, and I always liked him. But I always thought of him as kind of a rotational guy. But he ended up basically being our PJ Mustipher this year, and I think he played better than PJ did in 2022. He just made more impact. He also did a lot of what PJ did in taking up space, which is sometimes the main job, especially for a bigger defensive tackle, to just take up that space and make life easier for your linebackers. Devon did that, and it just felt like he had a lot more TFLs this year, and he had a big time year for us. So very, very happy with how he played. And like we said, this is the fans' vote. So, and we made it very clear it could be positive or negative. A lot of our fans chose violence, and they chose Dante Cephas. And I have a feeling not for positive reasons. And yeah, I mean, it was a disappointing year for Dante, and I wish it could have went better for him, and I'm sure he does as well. But no hard feelings, it just didn't work out, and it just sucks when it doesn't work out, when we had expectations and those expectations just weren't met. And million reasons why it happened, but that's the way it went.
You're right. And I just think the reason wasn't even really because of the performance, but it was just the expectations, right? There was just so many high expectations going into the year, and potentially being the guy at wide receiver, since there were so many question marks last year. But I think it's an important lesson for Penn State fans that sometimes you will go into the portal and you won't always have, the solution right then and there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, not to dwell on this one for too long.
No, I think Josh Pate said, like, I think he put this right, like, in the portal, like, looking for something in the portal is kind of like going to the grocery store in Venezuela. Like, there's stuff there, but first off, there's not a ton. And the stuff that's there usually isn't high quality. And that's not to paint the whole portal with the broad brush. The Chop Robinson was from the portal. But you find a lot in the portal that it just won't work out for you. And unfortunately, that's how it went with Dante Cephas. So I saw he just got crystal balled to Kansas State. So if he does end up there, best of luck to him.
Good. I did not see that. Good call.
Yep.
All right. The next award that we'll be discussing today is the JOMO Award, given to the best assistant coach on the team this year. We did have a preseason vote. The preseason vote was that Manny Diaz would win the award with 73.2%. Mike Yurcich at 16.1%, and Coach Sider with 10.7% of the vote. Probably not the most surprising one, but the winner of the Hardies 2023 award for JOMO goes to defensive coordinator and linebackers coach Manny Diaz. I mean, it speaks for itself. He's now the head coach at Duke. The defense was number one in a lot of categories. They took the ball away. They didn't let people score very often. We were more excited to watch the defense than the offense, which I think a lot of people are just naturally gravitated towards watching the offense play. But I was genuinely more excited when our defense was on the field. And that's probably for two different reasons. But I mean, he came in for 2 years and did great. And the defense somehow even got better from last year. So surprisingly, only 66.7% of the vote. 17.6% of the vote, Shawn, to Deion Barnes as number 2. So, you know, to each their own there. But
hey, I mean, I kind of like the Deion Barnes pick now that I think about it. I voted for Manny Diaz. I thought it was the most obvious choice. The guy got a head coaching job from how good he did this season, well deserved. I considered strongly Mike Yurcich, but I just didn't think I could pull the trigger on it. But yeah, in all seriousness, couldn't have been happier with Manny. I think his 2 years at Penn State worked out really, really well for both of us. We needed a defensive coordinator to replace Brent Pry. I think Franklin wanted, and no disrespect to Brent Pry, who I like quite a bit, I think he wanted to see an upgrade over him, and that's exactly what Manny was. And like I said, I don't think it could have worked out better for either of us. I think he made a remark that it was that he doesn't think any defensive staff in the country had more fun coaching together, and you could see that in how the players played. Because I don't think there's a defensive unit in the country that had more fun playing together. So that's a credit to him. But like I said, I do like the Deion Barnes pick because I think you could even make an argument. I know it's a player award for the "Wow, we were wrong" award for Deion Barnes, because I didn't know what we were going to get out of Deion Barnes. It was a total mystery, and it ended up everybody played really, really well on the defensive line. I thought everybody got better. So that's what you look for in a coach, to see progression, to see your roster continue to progress, and everybody got better in the defensive line. But like I said, had to go with Manny.
That's a good point about the "Wow, we were wrong." Wow, we were wrong award. You brought up Mike Yurcich for a second. I wanted to go back to the Havoc Award because somebody wrote in Mike Yurcich's offensive game plans for the Havoc Award, which I thought was pretty funny. Specifically, it wasn't just like Mike Yurcich. It was like his offensive game plans, because I guess he deferred from what everybody wanted him to do. I don't really know how that all went down. But
did we get any smart Alex that voted for Mike Yurcich for the Coach of the Year award?
No, I don't know if I even listed him, and nobody wrote him in, because I definitely didn't list
somebody
him.
Might have wrote him in.
Yeah. So Deion Barnes 17.6%. Ty Howell comes in next with 5.9%, and then Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter tied with 3.9%, and Phil Trotwine got 2%. So no Marcus Higgins, not surprised there. But correct me if I'm wrong, but also no Jaywan Sider, which I guess I understand, given that Nick Singleton didn't necessarily have a good year, but still thought somebody would vote for him. But in hindsight, I don't know if you look too much into it. When Manny Diaz was the overall popular favorite, you can only vote for one person.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's go to the excuse me, let me say this one right too. The all right award, which I think this is the hardest one to explain what it is, because I don't know if we actually ever gave a true explanation for what this award it means or is. We probably need to think about it a little bit more, but it basically turned into like the three players that people like the most. Like I don't really know the way people were voted on it. Like, just to give you an idea, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players got into double digits for this one. So people were kind of all over the place here. The winners all had less than 30% of the vote. So your guy didn't win this award because we're going to give it to three players. Don't feel bad. It was kind of all over the place a little bit here, which I actually kind of disagree, I think, with all of these. Or they weren't the ones I chose, at least. In my opinion, Shawn, the award should go to somebody who maybe wasn't like the offensive player of the year, but like was above average, and maybe you didn't expect them to be above average. Like, to me, I'm thinking like Devon Ellis or a Daquan Hardy or a Katron Allen, which I don't even know those are the three I voted for. But like that to me is like an all right award. Not your best player, but a compliment, a a what's the word they use for basketball? The players that role players, if you will. That's kind of how I think of it. I don't know if you think of it differently than that.
Yeah, I think I remember doing this last season because I would myself was a little confused as to what it meant. So I know I voted for Johnny Dixon. He was one of mine. I want to say I voted for Jalen Reed and Caden Wallace. I think those are my three. So
I think Caden Wallace may have been one of mine too.
Yeah. I mean, I really think we had maybe the best offensive tackle combination maybe in the country this year. So, and unfortunately, we lose both those guys. So that's a bummer. But I can't think of a guy who really from the last 2 years, 2022, 2023, from 2021, who's improved quite like Caden Wallace did. So really, really happy with the way his career turned out.
No, yeah, I agree. I think we went on a little bit of a rant about Caden Wallace the other day. Without further ado, the winner of the all right Hardies Award goes to tight end Tyler Warren, running back Nick Singleton, and defensive end Chop Robinson. Congratulations. Again, kind of all over the place here on the voting, but just give you an idea, Katron Allen was at 21%. Adisa Isaac was at 19.6%, of whom I think maybe I voted for him. Daquan Hardy was at 15.7%. Drew Aller was at 11%. Bo Probila was also at 11%. So there's some people kind of all over the place here. Johnny Dixon at 11%. Alex Felkins, I think, would have been also a good selection there with 11%. So, in my opinion, no, these three guys are really good, but I think they were almost too. I think Nick Singleton is a good one, but I think Tyler Warren, who won the Offensive Player of the Year award for us, and Chop Robinson, who won the Havoc Award, are maybe too good, in my opinion, to win this award. Which, no disrespect to them, but regardless, let's talk a little bit about Nick Singleton, because we already talked a little bit about Tyler Warren and Chop Robinson. Nick Singleton didn't have a great start to the year. Some people started trying to think that he was like a step slower, like literally a step slower. We kind of said, no, that's not really the case. And sure enough, they got a little bit better blocking, especially downfield. They were able to throw the ball a smidgen better, say in the Michigan State game. And we saw Nick Singleton reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, I never thought speed was the problem with Nick. There was some speculation that maybe he put on too much weight. I didn't really think he looked all that much different from last season, to be completely honest. Maybe a little more yoked, but I didn't think that much different. I think his biggest issue and something that he'll have to work on for next year is vision. Sometimes there are holes there that he just missed, and they were there, but he just didn't run through them. And like you said, the outfield blocking was an issue. I didn't think Yurcich schemed stuff up for him very well. I said that at the time that he was here, that you have to find better ways to get him the ball. And I just don't think Yurcich did a very good job of that. And J1 Sider and Ty Howell did a better job than Mike Yurcich did in getting him the ball in advantageous spots. So I still want to see him improve his vision, and I still think he's a really good player, and he should have a big year for us next year. But I think he's a perfect candidate for the All Red Award.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I just think those two guys, I mean, it's just hard to believe we're already going into their final potential year at Penn State. Likely both are going to declare. Just trying to soak in as much as you can, right? Because both of them are so fun to watch for different reasons. So yeah. I mean, this is kind of what I'm talking about, right, Shawn? Like in a perfect world, you find a way for maybe if you're trying to make a playoff run in 2025, maybe you find a way to get one of those guys back, right? Like those are the small things that matter. I'm not trying to like start giving a sales pitch to those two guys for one of them to come back, but like unless they're able to get a Cam Wallace or a London Montgomery or, if Quentin Martin comes in and does something special right away, unless they're able to get those guys a significant amount of reps, you got to be a little scared about 2025. And that's just, the nature of the beast.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, and that's why recruiting is so important. And there's a reason why in the offseason we talk about recruiting so much, and it's because these guys, I expect Singleton to only be here one more year. And probably the same thing with Kaytron Allen. So it's all well and good to enjoy these guys while they're here. But the nature of college football is you're always looking you're always looking ahead. And this isn't anything new with the portal or anything, and how much college football has changed in just the past 5 years. This is kind of the one constant. Recruiting has always been at the forefront of importance, just like the draft in the NFL. So you could get away with maybe a couple more misses in recruiting now, because you might even be able to get them back later with the portal. Look at Nolan Rucci, who is now on campus at Penn State, and Julian Fleming.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's kind of a weird the world we live in right now.
I know, right?
I think, Shawn, this is our final award to give away, which we did have a preseason vote for this one. But, Shawn, I want to just the last award that we'll be giving away tonight is the Samwise Gamgee Award, which, if you're not familiar with Lord of the Rings, is one of the hobbits that accompanies Frodo on his mission to destroy the ring. It is the unsung hero award, the person who maybe doesn't get enough love or respect or attention. But Shawn, you had a year to watch this movie, and I'm just trying to see if you did your homework, if you've seen Lord of the Rings yet.
No.
Okay. See how much you value our friendship?
Just didn't get to it.
Get to it? That's what your excuse?
I'm a working man. I have
That's
a podcast.
What your excuse is? Just didn't get to it for a whole year?
I got engaged. There's a lot going on.
Oh, now you're blaming the fiance. That's smart.
I'm not blaming the fiance.
That's what it sounded
I'm saying
like.
that I'm saying, as she stares daggers at me. I'm saying life happens, and I was a little too busy for the Lord of the Rings.
All right. Ken, are you willing to verbally commit to watching it this year?
I will watch it this year.
Hold on a second. Let me just record this so we have it. Shawn, on the record, are you going to watch Lord of the Rings before the Hardies Award Show 2024?
I could fit it in for the next year. Now, Penn State, they're going to have a national championship to win, so it's going to be a busy time for us, of course, but I will watch Lord of the Rings.
All right. Let the record show. And Shawn, the clock starts now. Just saying. There's 3 of them, and they're about like 5 hours each, so you might want to get started.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I knew they were super long movies, so, but I mean, The Godfather, they're long movies too. And,
Yeah.
you know,
I think they're better than The Godfather for whatever that's worth.
yeah, just different kinds of movies, like Star Wars is a silly, hearing it sounds silly, but like they're some of my favorite movies, but to each their own.
All right, Shawn. Anyway,
Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I like Game of Thrones.
I've never seen it. I figured you've seen it.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just crazy. So we saved the best award for last, by the way. The preseason, it was a close preseason vote for the Samwise Gamgee Unsung Hero Award. In the preseason, Johnny Dixon won with 34.5% of the vote. Tyler Warren at 29%, which I think is interesting given the awards he's won tonight. Keaton Ellis with 20%, and then Caden Wallace with 16%. So it was close in the preseason. And it stayed close in the final voting for tonight's show. This is by far the closest award given out. I had basically like a pizza pie for my like little pie. I mean, it's like evenly sliced across it all. So without further ado, the winner of the Hardies 2023 award, Samwise Gamgee, goes to defensive end Adisa Isaac with a whopping 21.6% of the vote. Daquan Hardy comes in at 19.6%. Then you had a 3-way tie for third with Kobe King, Hunter Norzad, and Tyler Warren. Riley Thompson up there as well, and Katron Allen up there as well. So a lot of people were split on this one, but Adisa Isaac takes home the Samwise Gamgee Unsung Hero Award, which, again, everyone's talking about Chop Robinson and what he's going to do at the next level. All Adisa Isaac did for the last 2 years is lead the team with TFLs, not getting the credit and love that he deserves. I think the fans knocked it out of the park with this one. I think home run, correct decision. And I even like the second place vote with Daquan Hardy. But both guys, Adisa Isaac, Daquan Hardy, we're big fans of, and we're excited for them in the future in the NFL. But nice to see Adisa Isaac, who has a great story, get an award here tonight.
I am not going to argue with Adisa Isaac winning this award. I did not vote for him. I voted for Daquan Hardy. But I'll talk about Adisa first. I feel a lot like going into the draft process, a lot like I did about Jair Brown, in that he may have been overshadowed a little bit by Chop. But there's going to be a team that's going to fall in love with this guy in the early rounds. And they're going to say, I don't want to wait till the next round. Let's go get him now. So you could see him going as high as the early second round. I think that highly of him. Maybe if he kills at the combine, maybe he could push into the first round. It's going to be hard, but it could happen. Just kind of again, just I'm almost at a loss for words talking about Adisa Isaac.
Like a Odafe Owe situation in a way. Doesn't have maybe
sort of
in his case, Isaac has the production, but maybe doesn't have the exact right measurements. Owe didn't have any production, but had the right measurements.
Yeah, it's kind of an inverse, right? And I think I think, like you said, maybe the measurements could prevent a first round pick, but that's okay. Like, this guy's going to be productive. He works incredibly hard. He came off a torn Achilles in 2021. Had to get his sea legs back under him a little bit in 2022, but eventually did it and ended up having a very productive season for us in 2022. And then he played his best football during 2023. So I think when you think about his work ethic, when you think about his ability to make plays, he's gonna be a really good pro at the next level. Like, I feel like we should write to GMs and be like, draft Adisa Isaac. Source, bro, trust me. Just he's going to be really good. Kind of one of those guys that you throw out the measurements a little bit for. I voted for Daquan Hardy because when you think about the Samwise
Gamgee,
when you think about like unsung hero, that's Daquan Hardy. Like always cleaning stuff up, being in that nickel. He's a small guy. But he's still really physical. He gets to show off his speed on special teams. Never complaining. Even like 2022, he was behind 3 guys that are probably going to be picked in the first 2 rounds. Stuck with it. And then you get to this year, he balls out. He's very good in pretty much every game. Struggled a tad in the Peach Bowl. But I'll say this about him in the Peach Bowl. The guy played almost every snap. So he was out there. He played. He wasn't, he didn't just, he did, and nothing against the guys that opted out. But I think there is something to be said about playing and saying, all right, I'm going up against a really, really good offense. And yeah, I'm going to get beat sometimes, but I'm going to play well sometimes as well. I'm going to still get mine. I thought he played really well against Ohio State. And he's the type of guy that I could see that I think you draft. Like if he's there in round 6 or 7, I'm taking him because you can never have enough corners. You can never have enough guys like him that I think could contribute on special teams as well. Not just like you'll think about punt returning, but I think this guy could be a really good gunner. And guys like that are at a premium in the NFL. And I've seen a lot of guys in the NFL play multiple years as special teamers. Look at Cam Brown. Like that guy's a captain with the Giants, and he almost exclusively plays special teams. And I think you get a lot more out of Daquan Hardy.
Yeah, I agree with both of it. Everything you just said there, 100%. There's a spot for Daquan Hardy in the NFL. No doubt about it. Okay. There were some questions there about if you listened or watched Hardcore PSUFB, if you watch other state media shows, and then, appreciate you for answering those 2 questions. But if you also gave suggestions, which is roughly about 20% of you, appreciate that as well. So thank you for taking 5 seconds to write some thoughts down. That's the only way management knows that we're doing a good job. So appreciate it. Thank you guys for a good season in that regard. Shawn, I did have some like quick, just not housekeeping notes, but like Penn State notes that I wanted to mention. Kind of buried the lead a little bit, but Penn State lost special teams coordinator Stacy Collins to Boise State, so they got to fill in a spot there. I mentioned on the show, on Twitter, excuse me, I mentioned, hey, do you consider promoting O'Brien and giving, say, the special teams responsibilities to somebody else, just because you don't want to lose O'Brien if that's Danny O'Brien's that important to you. But I'm just curious what they end up deciding what to do there. So that happened, and Shawn, I don't know if you agree with that mindset or not, but if you want to just give your 2 cents, and I got a couple other items too.
Well, I'd be interested to see if anybody's ever coached special teams before. Could somebody on the staff do it? I'm sure they could. We've had.
I think, don't quote me on this, but I think Poindexter has.
Yeah, I think it's something you have to entertain them because really I would like in an ideal world to have a real quarterback coach because at some point you do worry that there are too many cooks in the kitchen coaching the quarterback with Danny O'Brien, with James Franklin, who's going to be involved, and with Andy Kotelnicki. You do worry a little bit about that. I do trust them to be able to figure that out, but I would like to see one direct coach that the quarterback reports to, but we'll see what happens. So it's something I'd entertain, but if you have somebody in mind who's really, really good, who has shown that he was extremely productive at another stop, then sure, go bring him in. So I guess my answer is it depends.
trying to confirm whether or not I was right or this or not.
I saw Indiana's former special teams coach get mentioned. I do know that they usually have good special teams, so that'd be
the when he was at Virginia, he was the assistant special teams. This is Poindexter now. He was the assistant special teams coordinator from 2006 to 2008, and he was the assistant special teams coordinator in 2009. And then he was the special teams coordinator from 2010 to 2012. So he does have special teams coordinator experience.
And where was that at?
Virginia.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to go back and look to see how his units did, but I mean, that is quite a few years of experience. So, yeah, if he and I'm sure it'd be a nice bump in pay for Poindexter, and I think that's a guy Penn State really wants to keep around for as long as possible. So, yeah, I'd be all right with kicking the tires on that.
Right, and then you still have Terry Smith there to assist in safety work if you need to, if Poindexter has to do some of the special team stuff. So, gives you a little bit of flexibility there.
Yeah, and we've had coaches like I do know Stacy Collins was the outside linebackers coach. I do wonder exactly how much he did with them. I'm sure he was involved, but that was Manny's group at the end of the day. And
Charles Huff was
running backs coach and special teams coach. And for my money, Charles Huff was probably the best special teams coach we've had. So I know it's possible that you could coach 2 units and get the job done.
Yeah, you got to double up somewhere. And in my opinion, like you said, you kind of want to have a quarterbacks coach, right? Like I think you want to have a quarterbacks coach. If not for just what you were saying, having ownership of that room, of that group, having a room, say this even sometimes like in life, but you can have a lot of people being involved, but at the end of the day, when things get bad, who is somebody going to look to? Who's the leader in that group? If it's clear with the title, it might make a little bit more sense. So I think they're going to do that, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, I'd be all there for it. I saw Calvin Lowry mentioned too as a possibility. He's a GA right now with us.
Yeah, maybe O'Brien's not ready to be a coach. I don't know. Like
maybe. And I do there's pretty much nobody who knows Danny O'Brien quite like James Franklin. So I do trust his judgment on if Danny O'Brien's ready for that role yet or not. How old is he? Is he like around our age? Maybe a little older?
I think he's older.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I think he's older, probably like 32. So,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen position coaches be in their early 30s before. I know the Patriots, their new coach is only 37. So, and he's the head coach of an NFL team. So, it's possible. And Deion Barnes isn't that old. I think that's around Deion's
Billy
age.
Fessler just got the UCLA QB's coach job, and he's probably the same age as O'Brien, if not. He's right around the same age. He's got it.
Yeah, they're right around the same age because he was the scout team quarterback when we were in school. So I do know that, this is kind of, it's funny, like seeing all these guys that we went to school with now get coaching jobs. But I mean, the truth of the matter is we're not getting any younger. That's for sure. And neither are they.
No. So anyway, I wanted to bring that point up. Penn State gets 2 more transfer portal additions in cornerback AJ Harris from Georgia and cornerback, let me make sure I say this right. Jalen Kimber? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe it's because of Kalen King. So now when I see a Jalen spelled that way, I want to put a K there. So then it gets me all. I wanted to say Kalen Jimber. which should not be right. But Kimber is from Florida, originally from Georgia, and had recently committed to Louisville before flipping to Penn State. So anytime we get a chance to say Louisville on the show, of course, we have to take advantage of that. So he's been around a little bit more. Ended up being a 3-star transfer out of the transfer portal. AJ Harris was still a 4-star guy out of the transfer portal. Penn State is getting some severely good talent right now out of the portal. in positions of need. And I think, Shawn, we can talk more about them and the corners and obviously the wide receivers probably ad nauseum this offseason. But I want to just throw that out there so we could cover it. We could talk more later, but if you have your elevator pitch on your thoughts, go ahead.
Yeah, AJ Harris, really, really good pickup. I think this guy's going to be a starter next year. I saw 24/7 Sports had his comp to Joey Porter Jr., whom I think he had some success at Penn State and is having success right now with the Steelers. So I'm expecting him to be a starter. Kimber, he started, I believe, most of last season for Florida. I do know he had kind of an up and down season. He's going to be in the mix to start. I'm not positive he will be, but I do think I do think both of these guys are a good pickup, especially Harris. Harris was a 5-star recruit, and will be. I'm really, really happy to be able to have somebody like that in the room. And we talked a little bit a couple episodes ago about the potential need, if it were true that Kane, Dixon, and Hardy would go to the draft, which they ended up doing, the need to pick up more corners. And yeah, this is what we were talking about. And I know Zion, Tracy, and Cam Miller had tough moments in the bowl game, but that was their first time getting big time play, and that was probably the best passing attack that we faced this year. So not really good combination, but they'll learn from it. They're going to compete for those starting jobs as well. But I would be prepared to most likely to pencil in AJ Harris as a starter for next season.
Yeah, Sean Fitz from On3 said something kind of interesting the other day about originally he thought maybe the staff thought they had a chance to maybe get Daquan Hardy back, which that kind of cheered me up a little bit, thinking that there was a chance that could have happened. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, cornerback's going to be an interesting room. We saw like Storm Duck come in, didn't like the competition and left.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be very interesting to see because, I mean, I think the cornerback room is one of the most competitive rooms that Penn State has. And Elliot Washington and Zion Tracy and you have Lamont Payne there too. Those guys sounded like they got fit right in that room right away. So I think you have a really healthy room there. What take that for what it is on January 14th. But early indications to me, I think, is that Penn State's going to be okay. I don't, you probably aren't going to have the same level of production that you had this year, but that's not an easy thing to do. But I think they're going to be okay there. I think there's a chance for liability, but I don't think they're going to be liable as of right now.
Yeah, and I trust Terry Smith.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to trust anybody, right?
Yes, I trust Terry Smith to be able to figure it out there.
So we had a couple fan questions. One was biggest surprise, good, bad on offense and defense. I feel like we talked a lot about those guys today. Shawn, is there any like other thoughts you want to add to that, or do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, generally. Biggest surprise. What was the question exactly?
Just biggest surprise, good and bad on offense and defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we answered that. I mean, passing game, Cephas, but also Keandre Lambert-Smith. I mean, frankly, Drew.
Yeah,
I was expecting more from them, but just didn't happen. And we just gotta hope that's better next year. I do hope, and I wonder if Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be back this year. I would assume he will be, but that hasn't been confirmed as of yet. And then on defense, I think I might even just give it to the defensive line as a whole. I thought the defensive line would be good. I did not think they'd be as good as they were. So I might go defensive line as biggest positive surprise as a whole, particularly the defensive tackles. I just thought that was a very, very impressive group. And like I said, I knew they'd be good, but I didn't think they'd be as good as they were.
Yeah, I agree. Shawn, you'll love this question. Do you think they could? This is from Connor Marshall. Do you think they could have won a title with Clifford at quarterback this year? Drew is great and is 100% the guy, but given how much the offense stunk, it's clear that Clifford was doing the Lord's work in 2022, right? Um, I don't know if Drew is great, is how I would phrase part of that question. I think I think the jury's still out on Drew, but I don't know if we can say he's 100% the guy right now. Um, which I was hoping the 2023 season would at least give us that, right? Like we would feel 100% he is the guy. I don't know if you can 100% say that given some of the. Now, I know he had 29 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, but there were plays to be made there. I don't know if Penn State wins the title with Sean Clifford because as a huge Sean Clifford supporter, you still got to remember for a lot of the positives he had, he did have some really head scratching negative moments. And it just kind of depends how the coin gets flipped and which way the ball bounces as far as if they beat an Ohio State or if they beat a Michigan. I would say no, just because of the landscape this year where they might not even get into the playoff at 11-1. Even if they beat Michigan but lost to Ohio State. I mean, this year it wasn't a gimme at 11-1 to make the playoff, which means if you're not in the playoff, you might not have won a title or even had a chance to win the title. So I'm going to say no, but I understand what you're saying, but I think no, and maybe it's a Parker Washington, Mitch Tinsley conversation more than anything, but I tend to agree that Clifford would have elevated this team to some point. I don't know if that's to 11-1 or not, or a championship, probably not. But I think they get to 11-1. I thought they'd get to 11-1 with Drew Aller. So yeah, I think 11-1 with John Clifford would be feasible.
Yes, I think they get to 11-1. I don't think they would have won a national championship because, I mean, I think right now, we're kind of looking at Sean Clifford like the good old days where we forget about all the bad, but there was bad there. And I remember, I think it was our first podcast together, Corey. The Sean Clifford discussion came up, and Corey was always more pro Sean than I was. Even though I liked him, I thought he was good, but I didn't think he was great. I didn't think he was going to be a guy that could ever win you a national championship, and I still stand by that. And I think he would have gotten us to 11-1. I think we probably beat Ohio State, just because I thought looking at the two teams, we should have been better than Ohio State this year. They really weren't that great, and we just kind of blew it. And I think Michigan was always going to be a tall task. And there's a reason they won the title. But I do think we would have beat Ohio State this year. Probably lose a close one to Michigan. But hey, it's a fun conversation to have.
P. Danny on YouTube, by the way, I missed this. He says, "How have you not watched Lord of the Rings?" So shout out to P. Danny. All right. Last question here. With quote bench Cliff end quote being the runaway winner last season, what was the second worst fan media take this season after quote Aller needs to throw a pick end quote? Good Lord, our fan base has some idiots in it. I do think it's funny that people really truly thought that the pick was like this magical thing that was going to put Drew Aller over the hump. I still think that Drew Aller plays his best, not necessarily because of the pick, but when he's backed up against the wall. There's a couple 4th-and-1 throws that looked like his best throws, 4th down throws in general that looked like his best throws. I don't think it was the pick as much it was Penn State was now in a position where they had to do something that caused Drew Aller to have that nice throw to KLS in the Indiana game. As far as what would be the worst fan or media take this year, Shawn, other than that, can we just go back to the beginning of the year where people were still terrified that the run defense wasn't going to be very good and that they still weren't big enough. I think that one to me will always take the cake for the last 2 years, because I mean we'll probably hear it again next year that the guys still aren't big enough, and so I would
Oh,
probably
we will.
say, yeah, I'll
We'll hear
probably
the
say that.
Yeah, we'll hear the revisionist history about the Michigan game. That Michigan ran all over us. And it's
Right.
like, did you watch the game or did you not watch the game, or did you listen to what idiots in the media said?
I will say
that
that's
also
already
didn't watch the game.
that's already happened as far as like the media on that game. They literally always cite, because it's so they think they're, I don't know if it's just they think they're intelligent because they can say, oh, Michigan didn't throw the ball or whatever. And well, it's like, well, actually they did. And one of the biggest plays that they had in the second half was that pass interference, but no one seems to remember that they did try to throw the ball. But yeah, that's not
uh,
how that game went down. But so I would say, yeah, lacking the size in the defensive line was the take that probably frustrated me the most this last 12 months.
yeah, just remember, it's kind of like how people like when you look at media and people think, oh, this guy works at ESPN or Fox, he must know what he's talking about. There are a lot of just dummies that work at ESPN and Fox. It's kind of like when people assume billionaires are really smart. No, there are a lot of just dummies that got really lucky in life. They were born into it, and they made a lot of money. Like, don't put people up on pedestals just because they make a lot of money or they work for big networks, because believe me, you hear some
In
of the
the
worst
case of
takes from them.
media, yeah, in the case of media, I think it comes back to, and I think eventually ESPN does a good job of weeding those guys out. Like there might be somebody on there for like a year or two, and then they kind of disappear. And
Yeah,
I think ESPN does figure like this guy just can't speak or this guy doesn't know ball, and that to me is the biggest thing. Just because you played football
yeah,
doesn't mean you can then articulate football to other people. I'm not saying you don't know football, but it's one thing to know football and then not be able to illustrate your points or convey your message to other people. And I think whether or not these people are actually intelligent or not is besides the point. I think a lot of them just struggle to convey what they're trying to say appropriately.
yeah. And a lot of them do a good job of conveying it, but they're saying nonsense. Take Colin Coward for example. He sounds good, looks good, but he's a dummy. He doesn't know sports. Like, he just the same thing with Skip Bayless. Like, they are good on camera. Doesn't mean they know anything.
Skip, skip, skip.
Skip. Skip.
Did you
Yeah.
see, as we're wrapping us, did you see uh what Shannon Sharp is doing now?
Didn't he interview Cat Williams?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't see the interview, but I heard a lot about it. I actually really like Shannon Sharp.
Me too, but it's
Yeah,
not like sports related. It's
yeah,
called
it's
the
his
Shay Shay
podcast.
Club.
Yeah, Club Shay Shay.
Club Shay Shay, yeah.
Yeah, I have seen that, and yeah, I think he has this. I think it's the second most viewed interview of all time on YouTube. So
That one?
yeah, the Cat Williams one. It's already number one. I think he has like 45 million views on it or something. Like I said,
Holy
I really like
crap.
Shannon. Yeah, he's not who I'm talking about, but there are people that are just
I didn't realize it was that popular of a show.
yeah, yeah. I guess Cat
There's
Williams like ripped on a bunch of people,
Oh.
and then I don't know if you saw what Stephen A did this week with Jason Whitlock and that whole thing.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, he ripped Jason Whitlock apart for like 45 minutes. So
Uh,
there's a lot of speculation he was trying to get into Shannon Sharp's trying to get in on some of that clout. But anyway, back to the question. Um, I think the worst take, and this was particular from the fans, so I'm sorry, fans. It was the fallout of the Corey Geiger situation, where he asked James Franklin about chucking it. I don't think he ever said the words "chuck it deep." I want to quote him accurately. I think he asked him, and it wasn't the best way to put it. He asked, like, "Why don't you just tell him to throw it up no matter what?" And it kind of got misinterpreted a little bit. I think Franklin contributed to this too, because I think Franklin did know what he was saying. But a lot of the fans just took turns dunking on Corey Geiger. for bringing up an obvious problem that we were pointing out weekly at that point, that while we really don't throw deep at all, this is an issue. We are not explosive in the passing game. We kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And a lot of fans just kind of put their fingers in their ear and just said, no, let's just make fun of Cory Geiger. And I think it was a bad take. And I think people kind of saw it in the Ohio State game and they saw it again in the Michigan game. This was a problem. It was a problem against Illinois. It was a problem against Northwestern, but we were just able to overcome it because we were better than those teams. But then when you played against the good teams, when we played against Ole Miss, it really reared its ugly head, and we didn't have a vertical pass game.
A great defense.
No, there really weren't. I think statistically they were worse than Maryland.
Right.
So, yeah, to me, and like I said, this was mostly on the fans. So I'm sorry, fans. This one I'm mostly putting on you because most of the media, they were kind of hush-hush about it. They probably didn't want to get dunked on, so they weren't going to take Geiger's side fully. Now, and like I said, to be fair, and we talked to Cory about this directly too. He didn't phrase it the best way, but everybody should have understood what he was trying to say.
Right. And some people will try to, like, other media members, not necessarily on the PSU beat, then try to dunk on Cory Geiger.
Yes,
on top
you're right. You're right. Yeah, it got, again, national media. Doesn't mean they're smart. They probably watched maybe one Penn State game up to that point.
And zero press conferences, I'm sure.
Yeah, zero press conferences, which is fine. They have a big job. They have a lot going on. But, like, don't weigh in on something you don't know what you're talking about. But that's another problem with media today. Yeah.
All right, Shawn. I got zero left on the agenda over here.
As do I.
Good show. Just about 2 hours. That's it for the 2023 season. First of all, Shawn, I know it was a different year with Mercury coming in here. We went, I think, an hour earlier. We went to Monday nights instead of Sunday nights, I think. I don't remember what we did the previous year. Something like that. But we changed the schedule around a little bit. But we had a fantastic year, number-wise. Hit most of our goals, not all of our goals, but most of them, and excited for the next year. But Shawn, thank you for being the awesome co-host that you are. In a way, Shawn, I feel like from now until about June, this is when you thrive, and we get into some more Penn State trivia and knowledge, and this is where I feel like you come out of the woodwork, where you kind of just really take over the show. So I'm just going to sit back for these next 6 months and just let you kind of do your thing.
Well, thank you, Cory. That's very kind. And and yeah, I mean, like I always say, Cory's the one that puts all this together. He produces it, as well as there are people behind the scenes. I also want to second what he said earlier about getting the great graphics for us. Big thanks to Mercury and their behind the scenes people who you don't see on camera, but they're the ones doing a lot of the work. Cory produces every episode, so there is no show without Cory. So big thanks to Cory for bringing me on almost 2 years ago now. And yeah, stealing is the roof, guys. We have a lot more to do, and we close the book on 2023, and we hope for an even better 2024.
Yeah, ceiling is a roof for sure. Goal in the next 2 weeks is to pin down the merch. Management showed us some demos for one of them. They wanted us to choose one for one shirt, but I need to follow back up with management on where that is. So maybe in time for Valentine's Day, you can get your significant other something there. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support, for tuning in, and letting us just do the things we like to do. Like, we just kind of do our thing, and we were hoping people would like the longer shows, the shows where we really flesh things out instead of just giving you that kind of like 30-minute crap with about 10 minutes of commercials. And you guys have seemed to enjoy it. So shout out to all the long commuters. Shout out to everyone who asked us fan questions throughout the year. Kind of kept the show kind of going, kept it fun, kept it interactive. So for Shawn Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next time, see you later.
Have a good night.